Woo, yeah. We're gonna discuss, and we're gonna spoil the daylights out of Wonder Woman now. First of all, look at this Funko Pop Wonder Woman figure, Legend of Collectors. I hope you guys like that. Here's an animation of Wonder Woman by a fan. Isn't that dope? Look at that design. That's pretty dope. And the face even looks like Gal Gadot's. So that's really awesome. Some art here of Wonder Woman. Just a quick update, very, very quick. Yesterday, the estimate was that it raked in domestically, as you can see here, $38,850,000, and worldwide, $85,950,000. And that was yesterday, Friday, June the 2nd. So I would love to know what today's total is like and tomorrow's total. That'll tell us a lot about this movie. Remember, Box Office Pro, their estimates were, their forecast was that it would make about $111 million. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. Now, when it comes to the movie, leave your comments below. We're going to discuss the daylights out of this thing. But I don't want to take too long, so let me see if I can do this real quick. Gal Gadot. Her performance as Princess Diana and also as Wonder Woman was very much bang on with the character, as well as at the same time adding Gal Gadot's own flavor to it. Of course, she carried this movie, and Patty Jenkins ensured, and again, we just have to give mad props to Patty Jenkins directing. Patty Jenkins ensured this movie was about Diana. This was Diana's story. It began as Diana's story, it ended as Diana's story. Awesome stuff. I really like when Diana flew off into the sky at the end of the movie. Again, that was pretty inspiring, and then the music in this movie really made a big difference. We'll talk about that later. But Gal Gadot, absolutely perfect as Wonder Woman in this movie. Those who doubted her and said she wouldn't be able to carry the character of Wonder Woman, well, now you know she can. And not only could she do it well, she did it exceptionally well, because as we all know, universally the response so far about her is positive, and that is big, and that says a lot about Patty Jenkins. Patty Jenkins took the best part of BVS, which was Wonder Woman's appearance, and really extended that beautifully. Because the story is by Zack Snyder. Basically, this is a Zack Snyder film. Zack Snyder production, etc. Zack Snyder's people were used for training. Zack Snyder was used, his people for effects and all of that stuff. So Zack had a big role to play in this movie, but when it comes to directing this movie, that was Patty Jenkins all the way. And I love it. I love it. I love everything about it. And I think Patty Jenkins had a big role to play in how Gal Gadot did her performance. And I thought her performance was just on par with what you expect from a Wonder Woman. So she's Wonder Woman, y'all. Ben Affleck is Batman. Henry Cavill is Superman. It's what it is. It is what it is. She is legit. Big spoiler. Ares in this film. Ares in this film does not look like the toy Ares. He looks more like this figure that we're looking at right now. Ares looks more like this. So that's huge. And the actor that played Ares in this movie, David Thewlis, Sir Patrick Morgan. Well. There was rumors that he was Ares, and they were saying that, he's Ares in the trailers. But the way how the movie did it, it made you think that Ares was Danny Houston's character, which was General Eric Ludendorff. How Wonder Woman, Diana was talking about, he is Ares, and she was going after him. It was actually David Thewlis' character. So they were right all along. The rumors were correct. But I just want to talk about my favorite characters in the movie. Almost all my favorite characters in the damn movie died. God dang it. I was really interested in this character. Played by Robin Wright. Oh, she's good. She played General Antiope. And I'm going to say that was my favorite character in this movie. And she died, man. And I really got into her, and I really was devastated when she died. So I hope they do something on the Amazon culture, because really love this character. This general is unlike any other general you know. This general is intelligent. I thought this general was just vicious. Nope. She cared about every single Amazon, and she brought out the best in them. You would hear her say, "You are better than this. Try again." Or that was what she was saying to Diana. Or she would encourage. She was like a cheerleader. She was like a coach. You know, she would look at everything that the Amazons were doing. She would let them consult with her, you know, back and forth. And also the Amazons in their training, while they did fight against one another and they were pretty brutal with one another sometimes, they also worked together, even in training. And you would see little Diana come there, and she's watching everything, and Antiope saw what was in her. And so she shaped and molded her to make sure she also could defend herself against Diana's mother's wishes. Right? Definitely a totally different general. She was really called the greatest warrior, not so much only because of her fighting skills, which were phenomenal, by the way, but also because this was a general that cared about her soldiers. She literally cared for Diana so much she gave her life for Diana to protect her. That's how much this general cared about her soldiers and their well-being. She was not just one-dimensional, but she was the greatest soldier, the greatest warrior of them all, because she maintained the Amazon. She made so all of them were well trained. And the interesting thing about the Amazon community I saw was that the Amazons were not always dressed up in warrior clothing. They sometimes dressed up in normal Greek clothing. You see them in the streets sometimes carrying their baskets or whatever. Diana actually was the only child on Themyscira. All of them were big grown women, and you would see them moving like civilians with pots. You know, they were teachers, they were senators, they were, you know, but when it's time to train, it's time to train. You understand what I'm saying? And the general, her job was to make sure they were in tip-top shape. And I understand why now, because they didn't know when they could be attacked by Ares, because they sensed that Ares was still around, even though they were kind of hidden away from Ares in the world by Zeus. So I really like this general. The general showed different attributes that we don't see generals today having. Generals today usually, they're very aggressive. They try to make soldiers the best they can be through aggression and through forcing, not through encouragement, not through, exhortation, not through cheering them on, not through saying you can do better. So Antiope was a much more encouraging character, and a very intelligent character, and someone with intuition and foresight. And she also encouraged cooperation among the Amazons. It wasn't just about one person taking on one person. No, it was about teamwork. And so that was just different with her. I loved this character Robin Wright had. I would like to find out more about that. I'm so angry she died. It shocked me, and I guess it stopped the whole cinema as well. And you know what's the funny thing? There was no more fighting after she died. Like, it was like all of a sudden there was all this fighting and stuff going on, and as she died, all of a sudden all the soldiers were dead that were of the enemy, and just Steve Trevor was left alive, and the Amazons, you know, some of them died and some of them were alive, you know. But this movie did not spare us on brutality and the reality that people would die in this movie. And Diana saw one of her, you know, this is Amazon she grew up with, dead, you know, saw her get killed by a bullet. So, I mean, this movie is not, it doesn't hold back on being traumatic, okay, and being dramatic. It does not hold back. That's a part of life. That's a part of drama. This was, people who were in a war, and the war came to Themyscira. The Themyscirans had to hold it back, you know. But really amazing. I want to know more about this character. Steve Trevor is my second favorite character in this movie. And after Steve Trevor, of course, Diana. And of course, Diana played off of Steve Trevor. That would be my third favorite character. But again, Steve Trevor died in this movie. You know, it's really like, oh man. You know, I came out of the cinema wounded. I left the cinema wounded. I don't know about other people, but these characters, you know, they had emotionally grown on me. Antiope grew on me faster than Steve Trevor because Antiope had a different way of leading. And this character was so fresh and new to me, I wanted to see more of it. And she died. And I was shocked. Okay? And then Steve Trevor, wonderful character, Indiana Jones meets, Romancing the Stone with Kirk Douglas, meets a gentle kind of person, a true gentleman, and patient guy with Diana. And still at the same time, he's kind of playing second fiddle to her, but yet he's also in a kind of lead position because he has to direct her to the war and he has to tell her about things about the life in the earth. So he's playing a different kind of role, and still you gotta like this character, man. This character will grow on you, and then his sacrifice in the end, and you just hoping Diana would save him somehow, some way, because with all her power she should be able to save him, but she doesn't. So I really miss this character, and they really milked it. It reminds me a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where the guy who raised Star-Lord, he gives his life for him. I forgot his name. It's Lundo. I think it's Lundo or Lundo. It reminds me a little bit of that. Except Steve Trevor was so much in this film. He was a lot more than Lundo. This film really centered around Steve Trevor to a high degree. To just see this kind of character you just love go, really it hurt me. I mean, while I did leave the cinema with a little bit of a smile, I was like, gosh, man, did you really have to kill off that character? It's kind of like when in Suicide Squad when Diablo died. It was like, dang, I was just getting to like this character, man. But it is what it is. It is what it is. Yeah. So him playing his interaction with Diana was just wonderful. It was magical. It was magnetic. It was magnetic. It was a little bit rough on the edges sometimes. There was long pauses or stuff that I got kind of tired with, and even the room scene when they kind of came in and kissed and stuff. I loved it. It was classy and everything, but I wasn't really too much into that. But just their interaction and their sincerity with one another was what I liked. And then again, his vulnerability, almost a gentle vulnerability. He says, I'm taking you, he takes the lasso of truth, puts it around his hands. He says, I'm taking you to the front. We're going to die. This is a bad idea. That's the sort of insecurity that he has. And it's so nice to see that in a male figure. And also to see his gentleness. He's got this gentleness because he's not the lead exactly, but he's got a similar vision to Diana in that he wants to end the war so that people would live. Just Diana has a different way of going about it. Hippolyta is my fifth favorite character in this film. I am torn when Diana is leaving her. And, there's humor with it in Steve Trevor's trying to get out of there. When he sees Hippolyta coming on the horse with Menelope, he's like trying to get out of there on the boat and hiding behind Diana is really funny. But still, to just see Hippolyta, this daughter that she was proud of, who she did not want to be a person of war like herself. She wanted her to stay pure. She wanted to protect her. And she wanted her to be a leader like herself and diplomatic and so on. And she had to go against her will and train her as the greatest warrior ever. And that was kind of duty because she had to be just better than everybody else. But you could see she didn't really relish that. It's only when she was talking with her about not fighting and stuff, you would see the smile on her face as she started to talk about, a hero being someone that's not just limited to fighting. So I think she tried to instill certain values in little Diana, who only wanted to fight. And even then, when Diana was leaving the island, she was thinking, I need to find Ares to kill him, and everything will be restored. And she knows, Hippolyta knows so much more. But it's just very painful to watch her separated from Diana, her daughter. And even now, if you look at her facial expression here, Connie Nielsen really executes it. You can see that Hippolyta has a pained look because her sister's dead. A lot of Amazons are dead. And she is looking she's looking down at Steve Trevor. As if, you bastard, you just did this to us, you know. If it wasn't for Diana, man, they would have killed him. They would have killed him. I'm guaranteeing you, they would have killed him. But Diana intercepted him. It was like, no, he was fighting for us. My sixth favorite character in this movie is Danny Houston. I actually enjoyed General Ludendorff. Yes, he's ruthless. Yes, he is thinking of some ghastly things. But I think that Ludendorff, at his essence, was just a guy who would not give up. He had lost a son in battle. They were rationing food because they couldn't get food because the war was stopping it, the trench warfare. But he did not take no for an answer. And Dr. Moreau was a similar mindset, so that we had another couple in this movie, which was Dr. Ludendorff, and General Ludendorff and Dr. Moreau. And they also had a common mission to end the war, just as how Diana and Steve had a mission to end the war. Diana and Steve had it for a different reason. They didn't want people to die. Ludendorff, on the other hand, was thinking it doesn't matter how many people die. Once the enemy gives up and says, okay, you win, that's important. So the win was important for Ludendorff and Dr. Moreau. So it was a little bit different. But he was very determined, even though they were at the last end. And this is very much like the Ludendorff in history, even though that Ludendorff in history didn't die and he didn't kill all the generals. Even though probably if he had a choice, he'd have killed all the generals that were trying to get the amnesty. This dude killed his own people, his own German people. He killed all of them with the bomb. And then he was laughing about the fact that they're scampering for the gas mask and he knows it's not going to work. So I liked him. He's kind of like Chucky-like in his behavior. And I actually liked him. He had a likable, wicked, evil character. He was funny at the same time. And his purpose obviously was because he was being manipulated by Ares. He didn't know that. He didn't know he was being manipulated by Ares. Now, even though David Thewlis had sort of a not too much of a role in this movie, he was still, his presence was felt throughout the movie. So you saw him in the War Council that Steve was going back to. He's the one that Steve gave the book to. He's the one that was, keeping his ears to Steve and had Steve's secretary working for him. He's the one that got feedback from Steve, and when he found out that Steve and company were going to kill Ludendorff, he got heads up and he went down to the site to make sure things worked out for him. But they kind of were backfiring, right? So, David Thewlis. Now, David Thewlis was more of a side character, even though he turned out to be the main villain of this movie. But what I liked about David Thewlis was the fact that how he played the character, I thought was interesting. Now, yes, when it comes to side with me, join the dark side of the Force. Yes, we've seen that before, right? With the Emperor. But it hasn't been that recent, though, that we have actually had a movie where the bad guy... actually, Suicide Squad was kind of like that with Enchantress. She was like, join me or die. So we've seen it with Suicide Squad last year. But, other comic book movies, we haven't really seen that much, right? And then, of course, it was a little bit different. It was a little bit deeper in terms of plot and story, in that Ares is trying to side Diana with him, who is his sister, of course. He's trying to side her with him because he finds that she should have realized now that mankind, they're actually mean. They can be very, very mean. And that Ares, he wasn't manipulating mankind. He was actually, in his logic at least, he was saying he was just providing them the tools. He was just whispering in their ears, like if he was a demon or something. You know what I mean? And they took it and they went with it. So he almost got Diana to commit to killing Dr. Moreau. She did kill Ludendorff, but she thought he was Ares. And she went through some soldiers, man, when she realized that Steve Trevor had died. But instead of letting her rage and anger against mankind manifest, and she killed Maru, who actually was the cause of why Steve Trevor was died in the first place, because of her bomb. Instead, she let Maru live, and Maru scampers away because she remembers what Steve Trevor, which is the beautiful, that watch plant. They planted it in the beginning of the movie, and it really it paid off, because the significance of the watch is felt in the later part of the movie, and it's left as a memento in the final act of the movie, right? So it's really beautiful how, you know, Diana sees that love is what keeps Steve Trevor wanting to do something instead of doing nothing. And Steve Trevor is the guy that actually caused Diana to actually go and steal the stuff, you know, all the gifts that the gods gave, so that she could go and fight against Ares. Because Steve Trevor said something that his grandfather said to him, and he realized was reality, which is that with the time you have, you could either do something about a situation you see around you, or you could sit back and do nothing. And that's basically a statement for all of us, actually, that we could do something about a situation or just allow it to go on. You know, you can make a difference in the world, even if it's a small difference for somebody. So I thought that was really awesome. And Steve Trevor, he was really the hero of this movie, if you think about it, because yes, Diana fought Ares and defeated Ares, but Steve Trevor was the one that stopped a lot of lives from dying. You know, he was the real hero of Wonder Woman. It's just, I mean, it's just beautiful, and he has no superpower. So I just thought that was awesome in this movie. But yes, Danny Houston and I forgot her name. Oh wow, I forgot her name. She's a Spanish actor. They both played off of each other quite well in this movie. Etta Candy's role, played by Lucy Davis, fantastic role. Again, she was just kind of a support, but she was important for helping Steve along the way, as well as helping Sir Patrick Morgan. And then we have some other characters here. We have Ewan Bremer, who played Charlie. We have, I think it's something Great Rock. Lawrence Great Rock, probably. I think. He plays Chief. And we have here Saeed Thalmaguthi, I think is his name, Ogudi. And he played Samir. And all of these characters had some background and history. You know, Samir, he wanted to be an actor, so he was a con man. We had Smuggler and Chief, but his whole, you know, tribe and everything was wiped out by white people in America. He says Steve's people. And then we have here Charlie, played by Ewan Bremer. And Charlie loves to drink alcohol, sing songs. He basically like that. If it wasn't for the war, he'd probably be that kind of dude, but he's a sniper. Okay? And he gets nightmares of all the people he sniped. So it was just very interesting to see this band of kind of unlikely characters come together. And though they were side characters, they really were interesting and intriguing. And you wanted to see more of them, and you were hoping they didn't die. And they didn't die to the end of the movie, so that was awesome. Now, some of the other elements that made this movie really good was the score, or the soundtrack for the movie. And that was based on Rupert Grayson Williams. And he also borrowed some of the themes from Hans Zimmer and Junkie. I can't remember the whole thing. The cinematography was also wonderful. You went from bright, clear, brilliant, colorful cinematographies of Themyscira to the dark, gray, grim cinematography, rugged cinematography of London, and also, you know, France, where they were in the war-torn areas of France and Belgium, right? So, for instance, here's Themyscira. Look how beautiful and colorful and nice it looks, lovely. And then you have London, which is dark and gray and smoke-filled, right? And the war areas, again, gray and just like a wilderness, just bare and gray and drab and smoke filled, right? When it comes to the action scenes were also on point. I really liked most of the action scenes. There was some CGI moments that really looked a little bit obvious. I think my problem with the film, again, was the darkness at certain points in time where I couldn't see some of the action or see some of the dramatical moments in the movie. Sometimes it was a little too dark for me. I saw it in 2D. So that was mostly my problem with it. There was also, a few moments where Steve and Diana, I thought, oh, that's a little bit too fast for me, and sometimes also how Diana gained her powers. I was like, so she could have done that? Didn't she know she could have done that? How does she know she can do it now? So those were those little questions I always had. But as to the action scenes, I really liked it. Very much Snyder-esque, Zack Snyder action. Even the sceneries of Themyscira and all the other places felt very Zack Snyder-y. Even when Hippolyta was telling the story to little Diana, again, very Zack Snyder-y, how the depictions were. So I believe Zack Snyder's people had a lot to do with that and their production. Yeah, all of this is the action scenes. Now, the comedy in this movie was situational comedy, and it helped to lighten up the movie just right. And again, Patty Jenkins knew what she was doing. She knew just how much of the elements of adventure and comedy needed to be in this movie. Now, the comedy wasn't all over the movie, okay? There were sprinkles of comedy, but they were at nice points. They had nice beats to them, and that helped to smoothen the movie out. So, yes, I loved those things about the movie. And then the dramatical elements of the movie were carried mostly by Gal Gadot and how she felt, but there was it was basically centered around Gal for the most part. But you also saw Hippolyta, the dramatical elements of Hippolyta. You saw Diana's reaction, Hippolyta's reaction to Antiope's death, Diana's reaction to arguing with Steve about helping people, and to her it was very necessary to help everyone, You saw the drama again unfold between Diana and Ares when Steve dies. You saw again some more drama between Diana witnessing all the people who have been injured by the war, people who are hungry and haven't eaten, people who have been drained and really worn out by the war. You see the dramatical elements with Steve and mostly Chris Pine's character. And when they save the village, it's beautiful, but you see how distressed she is after the village that they saved is the same village that is mustard gassed down and bombed out, and all the people are dead. And you see the drama again between her and Steve there. And then again, we get some more drama with her and Steve when she thinks she has killed Ares and mankind hasn't changed. So there's a lot of drama. In fact, she abandons Steve and says they don't deserve her. And Steve is like, I still got to do something. He's constantly still feeling he needs to help people and save lives. So Steve was really like the real hero of this movie, in that he stayed consistent to wanting to help people and save lives. And Diana, for a minute, abandoned it, just like how Henry Cavill's character abandoned pretty much saving people's lives. And then Diana realizes, then she meets the real Ares, right? She meets him. And she's fighting Ares all the way through to the end after that. But Steve is the one that actually does the selfless act. And when Diana she actually volunteers to help Steve in that, because she's almost, Diana doesn't bat an eye to help. She's like so into it. She's like, I'm gonna help. She doesn't seem to know. She doesn't seem to know how to say no and how to help. And she was on a quest to kill Ares, man. She was like, she killed the wrong guy. That's another thing, man. I wish Ludendorff had lived, because I actually enjoyed that character so much. I wanted to see him live a little longer. So when she killed him, I thought he wasn't quite dead. I thought he was still strong, and I thought he may be Ares, because I saw somebody make a fist. So I thought he would have come back from the dead, because if things hadn't changed, because I was believing it was kind of like a fantasy, I thought if Ares was dead, then things would change. I like that this movie was showing the nature of man is not just dependent on Ares, you know. Unfortunately, still went back to Ares, and even when she did finally, when Ares actually was destroyed by his own thunderbolt, by his own lightning bolt, sorry. When Ares was destroyed, pretty much the war kind of came to an end, and the soldiers kind of looked at each other and hugged each other up. So the fairy tale kind of played through. But I thought that maybe, anyway, they were going for an amnesty anyway, so the war would have ended anyway. But I was thinking that maybe they should have just let that fairy tale not be true. That even though Ares died, that, you know, the soldiers still needed to be held captive, and then the war could have been over. But, you know, it's all good. I thought that ending would have been much more ringing true. They would have made what Steve Trevor said a little bit more true. But instead, Ares popped up on the scene, Steve Trevor, and they were like, oh my gosh, this really was true. She was telling us the truth. Looking in horror and everything at each other. But they still went on and do the task that they were supposed to do. And Steve was like, I need to do this alone. I really wish. It was kind of like, I remember when Gene Hackman died in that boat thing, when he saved everybody on that ship. It was the same shit, man. I wanted to see Gene Hackman live, and he eventually died. Oh, man, that sucked. The plane that crashed into the sea, I think it was a plane that crashed into the sea, or it was a boat or a ship that was sinking. I think it was a ship that was sinking. And Gene Hackman was rescuing all these people. It was, I think, a 70s or 80s film. Love Gene Hackman in that movie, you know, and he died, man. It's the same kind of thing. You love this character. You're like, no, don't kill this character. Please don't let Steve Trevor die. And you're like, because you're seeing it happening, right? Oh, come on, Wonder Woman. Come on. Ares ain't that important. Save Steve. You know, you feel that way, man. I don't know about other people, but that's how I felt in this movie. I really wanted Steve to live. So this was a tragedy. It was a tragedy, a drama tragedy, a Zack Snyder typical drama tragedy. Most of Zack Snyder films are drama tragedies. Think about it. 300. What happens in 300? The guy closest to the leader, he dies, right? Okay. Then the leader, the guy of 300, in 300 Rise of the Empire, he dies, and it's his wife that takes on and fights onward. Then you got... I think it was Sucker Punch after, or Watchmen. I'm not too sure which one. It was Watchmen or Sucker Punch. And in Watchmen, guess what? The main guy, Rorschach, he dies. And a lot of people die in that movie. Then if you think about Sucker Punch, the girl's sister dies in that movie. And then she lobotomizes herself. You know what I'm saying? Man, that's a tragedy. And then you got Man of Steel. His father dies in that movie, you know, sacrificing himself for his son. Then you talk about, and then, of course, Superman also kills General Zod, which he didn't want to kill him. And then you have Batman v Superman. Superman dies in that movie. I mean, come on now. Zack Snyder always got tragedies in his movie. So you know this was a Zack Snyder movie. But I love how Patty Jenkins was able to get emotion. She got you attached to Diana from the beginning. So when Chris Pine did die, you loved Chris Pine so much you felt it, you know. And for just a short while that Robin Wright was on this movie, there's a short while you would love Robin Wright's character. I really loved it. I really loved her character, and man, it hurt me when she died. It really did. I left the movie feeling more sad than happy, man. This is a crazy thing. I was like processing the movie. I was like, what did I just see? I was like some people when it came out of Batman v Superman. I'm processing it because I didn't expect Robin Wright's character Antiope to die at all. Not at all. She was just too fantastic for me. So that hurt me. Some of my favorite characters in the movie died, and that definitely had an impact on me. And then of course the movie was pretty heavy as well, as you guys know. It was pretty heavy. So yeah, but I mean, I did spoil myself with this movie in that I did see a lot of stuff in the movies, but still, it made me laugh. It made me chuckle. It made me laugh. It made me cry a little bit, even though I didn't cry. I didn't shed no tears, but the tears did well up in my eyes for a minute. And it got me emotionally, and it also got me in the sense that um, it didn't make me angry, right? It never made me angry, but it did make me feel hopeful at the end. And the way how they played out Steve's death, there was a payoff to the death. It wasn't just a death for death's sake. There was a payoff in that Diana had a piece of Steve in her life now. She had learned a little bit more about mankind, and she remembered Steve to remember that she could always do something, you know. So when you hear her talk or dialogue about man, you know, the darkness of man and so on, she goes on to say some things which are very inspirational, you know, that we can still do something in spite of all of that. And that kind of summarizes what happened in Batman v Superman with Superman, but I think a lot of people missed that point. But Patty was able to really clearly portray it on the screen so that you got the message. And I love when she just jumped off and flew off at the end of the movie in modern times. So she's still flying around as Wonder Woman, just that people don't know she's Wonder Woman. But in the day, she's a curator for the arts and stuff like that. So I thought it was pretty cool. The other thing I want you guys to, you know, discuss in the discussion section below is, at the end of BVS, Diana said she walked away from mankind, an era of horrors. She talked about 100 years ago. And from what I'm hearing with the recap that Diana gives here, it doesn't look like she walked away from mankind and an era of horrors. And then she talks about mankind not being able to work together. And truly, she just defeated Ares, and we saw enemies kind of hug each other. So I'm not quite sure what that means exactly. So maybe it's something that happened after, just after they won the war. Maybe something in between there, because it's something that's still not fitting together. Because she said, I used to want to be a hero, and then she finishes it up by saying she's still a hero, but the hero she wanted to be was different to the hero that she realized Steve was. And it wasn't just about solving problems by killing Ares, and it wasn't as simple as she thought it would be. So that's what she kind of came to the conclusion of. But I really like this movie. You guys could tell. I don't think it was better than Batman v Superman, but I think it just by a smidge it might be a little bit better than Man of Steel. Mainly because people thought that Man of Steel's ending was a little bit controversial. I think that's the thing. You have to end the film pretty strong. And I think in terms of Wonder Woman, they really ended it nicely with a touch of class. I think because people could follow the movie quite a lot, and they got emotionally invested in Diana's character, and then by extension Steve Trevor's character, I think that made the whole movie. The movie was really based on Diana and Steve more than anything else. Now, as to the commonalities between it and, say, for instance, other comic book movies I've seen before, it does have the general traditional way of which comic book movies work, but the spin on it was just the emphasis on anti-war. This was an anti-war film. The emphasis on love, the emphasis on how women leadership and women, you know, did things on the Themyscira more, you know, and this was reflected in the film with how Diana interacted with the people in that time period. It was a perfect time period to actually be in, because women were not even allowed in boardrooms and stuff. So, you know, you get to see Diana be outspoken and needed, and people realizing she was necessary by, you know, because of, you know, they couldn't do what she was doing. So I really liked that. World War I was a very interesting time as well, where you have, you know, people riding horses, but yet they're driving little car buggies, you know, basic cars, but still cars, you know. By the way, the CGI and special effects on this film were phenomenal, okay? All of London was CGI. So when you look at this picture here, when you look at this is CGI, okay? Some of this is CGI, okay? That ship in the background, CGI. You know, this boat is not a complete boat. You know, this is CGI. You know, that's CGI. All of this is CGI. This entire environment is CGI, right? Pieces of Themyscira, pieces of this is CGI. You know, that's how good the CGI is in this movie. Sometimes people are CGI. All of this is CGI. Okay? So, you gotta understand, the CGI in this movie is phenomenal. Phenomenal. And it's harder to do CGI of reality, of grounded reality, than CGI of, say for instance, Guardians of the Galaxy, which is some wacky, out there CGI. So when people tell you that, you know, the CGI in this movie was poor, please just ignore them, because they don't know what they're saying, okay? There's a lot of this movie which is green screen or CGI, and people are not going to know what is CGI from what is real in this movie. Alright? I'm talking about actual people also in this movie who are real. Like, for instance, this here, all of this is real. Alright? All of this is real. Even out here is real. But they touch it up with CGI. So the CGI for the clouds, maybe it was a sunny day, and they made it dark and cloudy. They put layers on different things. They add in places where... But for you to tell me all of this is green screen, you don't know what you're saying. You don't know. Right? Because she was literally running through an area and knocking down things, and it was an actual environment like this. So what they do is they mix CGI with actual real things. Right? And that's why I said to some people, I said, look, man, you don't even know what is CGI here. They're talking about the third act being CGI. How much of David Thewlis is CGI? How much of David Thewlis is real? You see? So they're talking about CGI, but they don't even know. Yeah, some of the flame was CGI, no doubt. That goes without saying. But David Thewlis, do you know if he's wearing a suit or not? It's like General Zod wearing a suit. Nobody knew that General Zod's suit was CGI. Right? They talk about Cyborg. Oh, Cyborg's got a CGI suit. No, it's because you know that he was wearing a CGI suit in the background. If you didn't know he was wearing CGI, you would think Cyborg, that was Cyborg. Alright? Yes, David Thewlis did wear a motion capture suit at some points in time. But David Thewlis' face was David Thewlis' face. Yes, even when you saw him in the hole after Ares had been knocked down, and if you notice, David Thewlis looked younger there. Yeah, they touched him up with a bit of CGI, and yes, his body's not that buff. They CGI'd his body as well. Okay? But it looked real. It looked like that's David Thewlis there. But it's not David Thewlis. It's David Thewlis' head on a CGI body. So, I mean, you have to let people know, and nobody would know that. Nobody would know that because they're really good at doing CGI now. Okay? Yes, when we look at Ares fighting Diana, there are times when Diana's CGI. Okay? And there's other times when it's really Gal Gadot you're seeing. There are times when it's Thewlis is CGI, and there are times when Thewlis, you're actually watching at Thewlis on a CGI body. Well, Thewlis already confessed that he was wearing a motion capture suit for most of it. So, I mean, it was pretty impressive what I saw, and you know, it didn't look like Thewlis' body was CGI. I mean, I gotta admit, it didn't look like that. So the special effects were on point with this movie. So why is this movie getting an 8 out of 10 from me versus a 9.5 out of 10 with BVS and an 8 out of 10 with Man of Steel and an 8 out of 10 with Suicide Squad, maybe even a 7 out of 10? Alright, let me tell you why. The reason is that this story is more fantasy than it is grounded in reality. There are times when time is suspense. Like when Antiope died, like I said before, it's not realistic because the fighting can't just suddenly stop because she dies and Diana's just paying close attention to her and Hippolyta and everybody come around. You can't do that. You're in the middle of a war. You're in the middle of fighting. So you could tell that was fantasy there. And maybe this is just Diana's account, so that's probably what she's thinking, and she forget about everything else. So that may be it as well. because Diana is telling the story. You had that again when Steve Trevor. There's a lot of ridiculousness in this movie, okay? That you have to suspend belief. But because you're emotionally invested, you actually go with it. Right? So, I'm just saying that's why I had it as an 8 out of 10. Because to me, it was a little bit more fantasy than it was reality. But, that 8 out of 10 means something because let me tell you why. This is a movie that has universal appeal. Everybody can see this movie. This was a movie for everyone. Even little children, even though it's a little bit more violent than we would want them to see. But, you know, it's on par with, it's a little bit more gritty and grimy, actually, and brutal than any Marvel movie I've seen so far. Okay? Even Captain America Civil War is not as gritty, grimy, and brutal as this movie. But this movie is able to still, in spite of all of that, make you focus on the positive things about it so that you're seeing reality and you're seeing it in a hard kind of way, but at the same time you're able to see that side of life and yet see the alternative to it. And that's what this movie presents. But it's kind of like Michael Keaton's first Batman 1989, which was, people were dying in that thing. And, you know, Captain America Civil War, people don't really die in Captain America Civil War, if you ever noticed. You know, it's PG-13. In Wonder Woman, people die, okay? Lots of people die. And you see the people die in the movie a couple times, okay? And you also, you don't see them die, but, you know they're dead. So, there's a lot of death in this movie. There's people with missing limbs, damaged eyes. You know, you see some pretty graphic things in this movie. So, it's not, you know, it's still, though, a movie that little children can see. But they need to be with parents so the parents can give them some consultation and talk because they're going to be seeing some things that are pretty intense. But yeah, still you can have your 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7, 8-year-old because they're exposed to these things a little bit more. And in this atmosphere where we have terrorism and some really horrific things happening in the world today, this movie kind of reflects the times, and you can't shelter your children from this stuff anymore. So it's okay for them to see some of the harsh realities of life. Once, this is the beauty of Patty Jenkins directing, you show them, okay, this is what happens, but this is also what somebody who wants to do something better for the world can do. So that's the difference with this movie. This movie is not focused on war. It's actually focused on the atrocities of war and why we shouldn't even engage in war and why, you know, peace is the better option. And interestingly enough, we see, again, a number of different characters in here who are pushing for peace. We have David Thewlis' character, Sir Patrick Morton, pushing for peace, but he's not really sincere about it. We have the generals who are looking for this amnesty, but yet they are willing to give a whole bunch of lives for it. You know, you have Danny Houston, he's pushing for peace as well, but by any means necessary, he doesn't care if the generals, his comrades, he kills them just to accomplish a much more devastating objective of killing a whole set of more people, and then by them winning, they can have peace on their terms. And then you have General Antiope, who really cares about her soldiers, don't want to see them die, but if you have to battle to the death, she's going to do it, you know. But she'll do it as a job. So Diana inherits that from Antiope. So I thought that this is that attitude, at least. I thought that this movie was very interesting on so many levels. And I think little kids, but you need to have parental guidance, of course, can go see this movie and they'll ask questions and you should be able to answer them with them. But yes, children can go and see this movie. This is one of those movies you can see. Couples, young couples, teenagers, old people, young people, old people who were longing to see Wonder Woman. You can go see this movie. You're going to love it. It will remind you a lot of Wonder Woman. The authentic Wonder Woman is here. The old Wonder Woman and some of the new Wonder Woman is in this movie. Comic book readers and comic book people who love comic books will love it as well. I think Patty Jenkins knocked this one out the park. But like I said, because some of it is not as realistic as, say, for instance, Batman v Superman or Man of Steel, I think that's what took it down for me a couple notches. That's why I had to give it a full grade. Um, the directing was really good. The acting was good. Nobody's going to win an Academy Award from this, I don't think. But the acting was good and definitely relevant to the comic book character. And Gal Gadot did justice to Wonder Woman, that's for sure. So, if you got any more things you want to put in the spoiler section and you want to discuss, feel free to do so. This is your boy saying, have a good one.